Hello BookTube, this is Weekly Reads, although this week probably should be called Weekly Bales instead. I've been continuing my little reading project that for the first few weeks of July, in which I would read American literature to coincide with the 4th of July. And as so many of my reading projects have gone, it's been a disaster. So I'll go talk about the books I've been reading, or rather, the books I've been bailing on. Anyway, so first up is The Burn Palace by Stephen Dobyns. This is a literary mystery novel set in a small Rhode Island city. And the mystery kicks off with a newborn being kidnapped from his hospital crib and being replaced by a large corn snake. From there, things in this small city go from bad to worse. An insurance investigator from Boston who's in town for mysterious purposes is found murdered. Coyotes are acting strangely. The stepfather of the boy who owned the corn snake that was stolen to replace the baby, he's getting weirder and weirder and more abusive. There are rumors of witchcraft and Satanism. And it's all just too much, especially too much for the city's beleaguered police department with an acting chief. So the state patrol is called in, and a number of detectives with the state patrol come in to lead the investigation, as well as to do some grunt work with like regular state troopers. And the main detective is Woody Peters, although this is very much more of an ensemble piece. A number of characters contribute to solving the mystery or mysteries. I actually liked it. I thought the mystery was well done. The solution was maybe a bit melodramatic, but I quite liked the mystery. The city I thought was well done. I especially liked how it's a city under threat, a city under intense pressure, so much so that it nearly explodes. And the characters I thought were, for the most part, well done, although some characters were not fairly well done. And I'm happy that the first scene of the book, the first chapter, kind of isn't quite representative of the rest of the book. The opening scene is intensely unfortunate, but I mean, I really enjoyed the book. I picked this up for my America 20 project in 2020. It was a ill-fated reading attempt on my part to love literary fiction, and of the 11 books I had picked up, I've bailed on all but 2, and this was one of the 2 that I did not bail on, and my favorite of a lot of them. Excuse me. So on Monday, I started and bailed on The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. This is a classic of American literature about a 20-something lawyer from a very wealthy New York family who is engaged to a young woman from a similarly wealthy family, and her cousin who's fled an abusive Polish husband. He's a Polish nobleman. Has come to New York to sort of get away from him and to get her life back, although society's not terribly willing to let her do that. And eventually, the main character, Newland, realizes that um, his fiancee May isn't quite right for him, but her cousin very much is, even though he refuses to see that. He, or by the time he realizes it and wants to act on it, it's too late. And he spends the rest of his life rather miserable. Well, I think all three of them spend their lives rather miserable. But I will concede that Edith Wharton is a great writer. But the book did nothing for me. I'm like, why? I didn't buy that Newland was in love with May. It just didn't really. Yeah. This book didn't work for me, so I bailed. And then on Tuesday, I started and bailed on We Bombed in New Haven by Joseph Heller. Now, the thing about this drama anthology is that on the cover, it says the plays are Benito Sereno by Robert Lowell, Hogan's Goat by William Alfred, We Bombed in New Haven by Joseph Heller, The Indian Wants the Bronx by Israel Horovitz, and The Boys in the Band by Mark Crowley. The table of contents says the plays are The Autumn Garden by Lillian Hellman, Camino Real by Tennessee Williams, Teen Sympathy by Robert Anderson, A Hatful of Rain by Michael Gazzo, and The Zoo Story by Edward Albee. The plays on the cover are what's in the book, not the table of contents. So I started We Bombed in New Haven by Joseph Heller. It's a dark comedy about a group of airmen in a war, and I lasted about a few lines, and no, it was terrible, just terrible. So then on Wednesday, and into Thursday, I read Poems by Elizabeth Bishop. This is her collected work, and I picked it up in 2020 as I think probably the second thing I bought from Book People, or part of my second Book People order. And I read it in 2020, and I didn't really get on with her work. I think there are maybe 5 poems of hers that I like, and the rest I really didn't get on with. And I was hoping to take the opportunity that this reading project presented to get a better handle on her poetry. Normally, when I reread a poet's work or a collection that I didn't particularly care for, it rises in my estimation. Although sometimes it might just stay the same. And in this case, it largely, again, I didn't really get on with it, and I ultimately decided to not finish the book on Thursday. I decided to bail. Because again, Elizabeth Bishop's poetry really doesn't do anything for me. But on Thursday, I started and bailed on Empire Falls by Richard Russo. This is a novel about a small city in Maine, the eponymous Empire Falls, in which about half the city is owned by this one incredibly wealthy family who's pretty much down to one member left. And she's nearing her death, and she's promised to give one of the properties that she owns, or businesses that she owns, this grill to her longtime manager, and things progress from there. Unfortunately, while the book might be great, I don't know. I didn't get that far. The prologue is the absolute worst thing. The prologue is horrible. It's like, I don't understand why it's there. It's a horrible prologue. Anyway, so there goes my July reading project. I'm never going to bother with Nikki Giovanni. I might come back to her collected poetry sometime later, or maybe into the next year. I don't know, but for now, yeah, my America-centric reading project is done. Which is frustrating, but I should have known that was going to happen, because when I look back at my reading projects, this is pretty much how they turn out. My America 20 project. Again, of the 11 books okay, this was also on the list. So it's now 12. So of the 12 books I've collected for my America 20 project, I've bailed on all but 2. One of them was, I didn't love it. It was okay. And one that I really liked. And then just this year, I had intended 2022 to be a year of no fiction. I would read only nonfiction in 2022. And largely my first sort of TBR of this year, my name tag TBR, ended up being, I think, I bailed on the second book, and I bailed on the third book, and then I bailed on the 5th and 6th books. So, yeah. And then there went No Fiction 2022, my History Month TBRs largely, I think, failed. My poetry reading project in April worked out pretty good. My March of the Mammoths turned out pretty good, although that was only the one book. March Mystery Madness was okay, although that was just Agatha Christie. What else? And then my reading project for Sebastian Reservoir Chronicle turned out very well as well. But for the most part, my reading plans and goals fall apart. And I could list far more examples. So it's, as much as I love creating reading projects and participating in booktube reading events, it's almost always going to be a recipe for disaster, and that is it's frustrating. As much as I like creating the TBRs and stuff. So anyway. So I took today to kind of try to recuperate from, this bookish disaster of mine, and I read some of one of my National Geographics that I still have, which didn't work for me either. I don't know if it's just I'm not interested in it anymore, or it's the new interim editor that's not quite working for me, but it hasn't worked either. So that kind of frustrated me. Anyway, so time to talk about what I will be reading this coming week, and hopefully I don't bail. Although the way things are going. Anyway, so I think I'm going to try to give a bail redemption to Unsettled Land. With M.W. Haynes. This is a history of Texas from its colonization by Americans, the Texas Revolution, and the years of the Texas Republic before it was annexed by the United States. I had a go at this about 2 weeks ago and didn't particularly care for it. And I want to have another go at it, but I don't know if it's too soon, since it hasn't been all that long since I bailed on it the first time. And I didn't particularly like the writing style, so I don't know. And then I'm also thinking of reading the 2 books for my my birth year, for the birth year book tag TBR or challenge that Criminally created a few months ago. So I was going to read Cathedral by Raymond Carver. This is a collection of short stories, as well as The Moons of Jupiter by Alice Munro, also a collection of short stories, both of which were published, or both collections were published in 1983, my birth year. I'm also thinking of reading or trying a bit more of Sorcerer's Son by Phyllis Eisenstein. This is a fantasy about a young man who's the son of a sorceress and the son of another sorcerer who goes in search of his father. I read the first chapter a few months ago for try a chapter tag, and this was, I think, my favorite or second favorite first chapter of a lot of them. So see how the rest of the book goes. And I'm also planning on reading some manga. Namely, I want to get to Kaiju number 8, volume 2 by Naoya Matsumoto. This is a series about a young man. Well, he's not quite young anymore, but he's a part of a cleanup crew who deal with the after effects of kaiju fights. In this setting, kaijus rather routinely attack Japan. When one day he is sort of bonded to a small creature that turns him into a humanoid kaiju. And he uses this to try out for the military force that specializes in fighting kaiju. And I quite like the first volume, and I'm looking forward to reading more of it. And so I've got the second volume, I've got the third and fourth volumes pre-ordered, so looking forward to getting to that. And I also want to try the first volume of Jujutsu Kaisen by Gege Akutami. This is a shonen series that takes place in a contemporary setting about a young man who gets involved in supernatural shenanigans. I was thinking of reading them today, but I just decided I wanted to focus on National Geographic because, again, I'm really contemplating canceling my subscription. National Geographic hasn't really done it for me, and I really haven't been reading the magazine for a while, so yeah, probably should go ahead and unsubscribe. And yeah, so that's my reading plans. So a bit about this past reading week. So my aunts came over on Tuesday to visit with my mom, and it was a pretty good visit. And then we went over to my brothers for a small-ish impromptu baby shower, which was pretty good too. And then on Thursday, we watched The Four Children of the Apocalypse, which was exhausting, as watching them usually is. They're fun, I love them, but they are exhausting. So anyway, for this coming week, I want to do some tags, and maybe some discussion videos, and anything else that strikes my fancy. And of course, I'll do weekly reads. Hopefully, this coming reading week will be much better than this past one. So we shall see. I'll report back on Friday. So anyway, BookTube, that's all I've got for today. Thank you. Have a great rest of your evening and weekend, and I will see you again on hopefully Monday, and if not, on Tuesday. So until then, thank you and stay safe.